Hi, I'm Dr. Laurie Marker, and I'm the founder and executive director of the Cheetah Conservation Fund. And it's really nice to be with our fellow Society of Women Geographers members tonight. I'd like to take you through um, my story of my life, which has been trying to develop a future for cheetahs. So I hope that you'll enjoy this, and I'll try to bring you all together. I have put two books, which are kind of the basis of what my presentation is. So The Future of Cheetahs, which is the title of my talk, but also all my research has been published in a book that I've edited, which is Cheetahs, Biology and Conservation, which is an Elsevier book, and it's a textbook, and it's anything you'd want to know about cheetahs, but you were afraid to ask. But with that, I'm going to give a general overview of the cheetah and make it, I hope, enlightening and easy for you to follow. Well, cheetahs are the fastest of all the land animals, and they are the most amazing animal on the face of the earth. And I am partial, and I've been studying them for about 50 years. So I want everyone in the world to know why they're special. But first, being the fastest land animals, every part of their body is built for speed, from the aerodynamic small head and narrow body to long legs. They're the only cat that has dog-like, semi-non-retractable claws. Their whole body is adapted for speed. So from having an enlarged heart, again, very aerodynamic in the way that they're built, they have a very long tail, which you can't see there right now, but that's used as a rudder for balance. Their claws are also used to help them as cleats for traction and running. And they are fast, but they can only go fast speeds for very short distances. They are a sprinter and therefore have to make their kill with only a few seconds of this fast speed run, and they can go up to about 70 miles an hour. Cheetahs are not only beautiful and fast, but they're also, as I say, the icons for the arid landscape. Where the cheetah is living, found in some of the driest and most arid places on Earth. And with this, they allow us to understand what these ecosystems are like. And we've studied these systems because we've studied the cheetah. But not only are they in some of the most arid places on Earth, they're also where some of the poorest people are living. And with this, our programs have wrapped around trying to understand how cheetahs are living with people and then trying to make a better place on Earth for both cheetahs and the people that they're living with. So being in arid landscapes, cheetahs can actually go forever without having water, although water is wonderful. And here, one of our cheetahs is drinking water in after a rainstorm here in Namibia. We're also very arid. We go through lots and lots of droughts, but cheetahs don't really need water because they can adapt, as are most arid landscape adapted animals are, to not having water. And so for the cheetah, they would get the fluid that they need actually from the animals that they would hunt and kill, from the blood, and that also can keep them sustained. But when there is water, they just as soon have it. Cheetahs hunt small antelope. This is a young antelope. They would hunt animals up to medium-sized, anywhere from springbok, Thompson's gazelles, even up to female kudu. Young kudu have been a very important part of their diet here in Namibia, and anything under that. Male cheetahs live in what are called coalitions, and they often can hunt larger animals. But as a top predator, and how cheetahs do hunt, they are the best hunter of all the savannas. They will hunt and then will eat as quickly as they can because oftentimes their kills are taken away from them by many of the other large predators. Lions, hyenas, jackals, even vultures can chase the cheetah away from their kill. So the cheetah does hunt and eat rapidly, but after it's run down its prey, it's usually quite exhausted for up to 15 to 20 minutes. And so it's panting and it can't really eat. And that's when a lot of times their losses occur. But being a top predator, cheetahs play an important role in the ecosystem because when they have made a kill and they eat what they can, they will share this prey by leaving the remains for everybody else that is within the system. So it could be lions, it could be hyenas, jackals, vultures, insects, any of the other small mammals as well. So top predators are extremely important to maintain ecosystems. And when you have a top predator, there's usually greater biodiversity within that system. Cheetahs, if they, male cheetahs usually live in a coalition of potentially up to 2 to 3, up to 4 or 5 animals. They're brothers. They have been born and they live together their entire lives. A mother will stick with her cubs until their cubs are about 18 to 22 months of age. The female is the one that's doing most of the hunting, and the cubs start learning to hunt with her and then are only able to hunt on their own when they leave mom at about 18 to 22 months. At this point, they do stick together, and that allows them to hunt much better together. And as they hunt together, then as they're learning and they're young and they don't have their mother, they're able to hunt successfully. A coalition of males can actually bring down a larger antelope, whether it would be a adult kudu, even up to large female eland, which they can hunt, or even young giraffe, as well as young zebra. But most of the time, they will hunt smaller antelope. But being in a coalition, they can hunt larger animals. As I mentioned, male cheetahs live in a coalition. And what they do is they mark territory all the time, like these males are. And that territorial marking at oftentimes marking posts, whether it's a tree like this, often called marking trees, or in Namibia, they're called play trees, because oftentimes cheetahs are around these trees and the farmers used to think that they were playing in them. Mothers and cubs would go to the trees to sniff and smell where the males had been. And we now know much more about the play trees. We've been studying this for about 35 years and understanding how that plays a very important role in the movement of the cheetahs through their ranges. Cheetahs have huge home ranges, and these marking trees become very important for actually delineating these territories and these ranges. And because they have such large home ranges, there's oftentimes what we call timeshare, where dominant males are the ones marking in these territories. And if young subordinate males come in and they sniff and smell where the dominant males have been, they will usually move out of that territory fairly rapidly. Dominant males' home ranges can go from an average of about 1,500 square kilometers down to, as they become territorial, more like 300 to 400 square kilometers. So they become much smaller. And they actually then will protect those territories. A female then will give birth when she is usually about 2.5 years of age. So the males and females will stick together until dominant males come in to where the young males and females are living and would breed the young females, and then will chase the young subordinate males out. And the subordinate males can go a couple hundred kilometers away outside of their mother's home range. The females will stay within the mother's home range and the home range shift, but there's a very matriarchal society. Now, a female cheetah, after about a 93-day gestation, can have up to 4 or 5 cubs. They can have 6. There's been a couple reported of 8, but average is 4 to 5. These cubs are just getting about probably 7 to 10 days of age. Their eyes open at about 10 days of age, and they will stay within the den with the mother until they're about 6 weeks of age. And then they start following, but they can't go far because they're very small. And so the mother's home range is very small when she's denning and will never go more than about 5 kilometers away. And then as the cubs grow, they follow mom at about 6 weeks of age, and then they're with her until they're about 18 months of age. Female cheetahs, I think, are one of the most amazing animals on earth. They take very good care of their cubs. When a female makes a kill, the cubs eat first, and her whole role in life really is to hunt and raise her cubs. And they are excellent mothers. They, not only nurse them until they're about 6 to 8 weeks of age, but then are very affectionate to them. Cheetahs are interesting because of the kinds of communications they have. They chirp like birds. They purr. They growl, hiss, spat, and gurgle, bubble, but they do not roar. So they are very interesting. And one way that you can tell a cheetah from any of the other spotted cats are with those black tear marks which run down from their eyes. They're called malar stripes, and they're very useful in helping them hunt. So they use them as a sight or a scope on a gun would be. So when they're going up to 70 miles an hour, they really can't blink and they keep their eyes straight forward, and those stripes help them. They also are thought to help refract the sun's glare. So again, the cheetah is just an amazing animal, the way it lives, and their biology and their ecology is what I've spent my life studying. But with that, the cheetah is, their survival is in humans' hands. And that is why I set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund in 1990 and have been working on trying to develop conservation strategies based on our research. And using it through education to try to bring awareness to how special this icon of the arid landscapes are. And where you have a top predator, you've got, again, much greater biodiversity. However, there's been lots of problems in trying to maintain the species, and that's kind of the story of what I'm going to talk about today and many of our solutions. Cheetahs are the oldest of the big cats. They've been around for about 35 million years. And you can see by this chart at what point they broke away. They broke away from the main cat lineage about 6 to 8 million years ago. And their closest relatives are that of the puma and the jacaranda. But their ancestors are very, very old. And again, they are the smallest of all the big cats, and they are the only species in their genus, which is Acinonyx. Cheetahs have been loved or revered by kings, emperors, and princes for over 5,000 years. They were caught in the wild. They found out that they could be tamed and and pets. They kept them in their tombs to protect the pharaohs, but also they used them as a hunting companion. And with that, they would catch them from the wild and then as adults, and then tame them down and take them out to hunt. And that's called the sport of coursing. And unfortunately, they were caught in hundreds and thousands. By the 1400s, cheetahs were found for the sport of coursing throughout Europe. And these animals were all caught in Africa and Asia. And by the early 1900s, the cheetah was basically extinct or going extinct throughout most of its range in Asia. And then they started bringing animals up from Africa to try to play the role in the Asian area. For instance, like India, where they were kept by the Maharajas, where they were kept for the sport of coursing into the middle, early 1900s. Then, unfortunately, the hunters came about. And by the 1950s, the cheetah was extinct in India, and the last cheetahs were killed by by hunters. So the cheetah has actually been loved to extinction throughout Asia. By the 1970s, the cheetah was extinct in the Middle East as well. And today the populations are a remnant of what they once were. Only about 9% of the cheetah's range and numbers of cheetahs are still found. And that goes along for many of our animals. Today we are in the 6th global extinction, and we're looking at great biodiversity loss, of which by 2050, there's a good possibility that we could lose 40% of all of our terrestrial species. We're looking at the loss of 25% of our land mammals, 14% of the world's birds, and 41% of our amphibians. Our large carnivore decline is great, and it is showing shrinking ranges, and it is quite a problem on Earth for not only the cheetah, but for all of our other large carnivores and predators. This is what we're dealing with for the cheetah. So in the last 100 years, we've lost cheetahs in over 20 of the countries where they once lived. We've gone to reduce the population by over 90% in that period of time, where today we only have about 70, under 7,000 cheetahs, under 7,500 cheetahs. It's a bit hard, but that's about what our estimations are. You can see on the map on the right, the light yellow is where the cheetahs were once found, even up to 100 years ago. And today, the dark yellow is where they are found now. Most of these populations, of which they are 33, are found in very fragmented areas. They're in 23 countries, but 20 of those populations are under 100 individuals. So they're very fragmented and very widely dispersed. Most of the cheetahs are found outside of protected areas. And that's an important part, because that's why we have to work so closely with the farming communities as well as the livestock farming communities to try to stop the conflict that occurs with the cheetah. Most all other large predators are found in the protected game reserves throughout Africa, but these reserves are too small for cheetahs to live in. And so that is why they're pushed out and they're found outside of protected areas. Most of the cheetahs are found in southern Africa, and where I'm based is in Namibia. And Namibia is, you can see where in the southwest Africa, where I've got the flag, and which is where our base is, and we are called the cheetah capital of the world. We have about 1,000 to 1,200 cheetahs left, and that's about the same as what it is in Botswana. Now I have another flag up there, and that is the flag of Somaliland, which is an unrecognized breakaway country from Somalia. And we also have a base for the Cheetah Conservation Fund up in Somaliland. And there we're dealing with the illegal wildlife pet trade. So I'm going to take you through a lot of the problems and the solutions that the cheetah is facing. The big threats facing the cheetah is that of loss of habitat. Much of the habitat, as I'd mentioned, is very arid, very much overgrazed and degraded by too much livestock and very, very poor people. And with that, when there is so much livestock and also ignorance and not understanding how to best care for their livestock through management, there is human-wildlife conflict. And this is a problem with all predators everywhere. And when the cheetah or other predators catch or see livestock, they will catch and kill it. And then the farmers will go out and kill the cheetahs and other predators as well. And many people think that predators are wanton livestock catching animals, and they really are not. Much of this really revolves around how we manage our livestock and how accessible it is, because predators are opportunistic and they're not just out to try to catch their livestock. Another problem there is that of the illegal wildlife pet trade. And that's something that I'll talk more about at the end of my talk, but are stolen from the wild in the Horn of Africa and then sent into the Middle East illegally as cubs. For every one cub that is tried to get into the Middle East alive through the illegal trade, 4 or 5 of them usually die. So it's been pretty horrific, and we've spent the last 6 years trying to actually stop that trade. And then our research since the 1980s has gone into the genetic diversity and looked at reproductive problems facing the cheetah. Cheetahs are a species that does lack genetic diversity. We discovered this in the early 1980s. And from that, we also found extensive reproductive problems from our work when we actually not only have been looking at the cheetah throughout through captivity to understand much more about the species' health and genetic makeup and reproductive makeup and diseases. But from that, we actually found, after sequencing the cheetah's genome, that we linked that back into many of the reproductive problems that we see today. So these are the problems facing cheetahs, and these are the threats that we're looking at trying to counter. So why cheetahs and who am I? Well, I started working with cheetahs in 1974 in Oregon at a wildlife safari park, very similar to that of the San Diego Wildlife Park. They were brought up, developed at the same period of time, but our park was in the middle of nowhere, Oregon, Southern Oregon, and this area looks very, very much like Africa. It's a 600-acre park where the animals were free-ranging in large compounds, and we were one of the few places in the world that had cheetahs. Well, I was young, and I grew up with an agriculture background on the back of my horse with my dairy goats, and I always had dogs and cats. And I was a veterinary technician. As a young child, I'd travel around behind the veterinarians and help them with everything. And so when the wildlife park started, I actually was in an agriculture project. I was trained first as a viticulturist and a enologist, grape grower and winemaker, and had moved from Napa, California, where I was trained, in Davis, California, into the new frontier, which was Oregon. And there was this wildlife park that had just opened down the road. And I went there with my background and said, I would love to have a job here to help support my business. Well, the cheetahs took my life, took my heart, took my brain, and I have studied the cheetah ever since. I wanted to understand what was going on with cheetahs, and I ended up with that cheetah Khayyam, of which I'm going to go backwards here too, who I was able to raise when she was a young cub in 1976. And I was offered an opportunity to do groundbreaking research with her in 1977 to find out if a captive-born cheetah could learn how to hunt, whether it was instinctual or whether it was mother taught. And so I ended up in Namibia, Southwest Africa, where her parents had come from a couple years earlier. And I was to teach her how to hunt. Well, what I did was teach her how to hunt, but I also found out the problems facing the cheetahs. As I'd mentioned, cheetahs go to play trees, and the farmers in Namibia found that they could set cage traps at these play trees. And if you caught one cheetah, you'd catch an entire family. And what I found that when they caught them, they would then kill them. And this was in the middle 1970s. And between the time that I learned that and I was trying to find out everything I could and what to do and asked everybody in the world who was going to try to help save cheetahs, the farmers in Namibia killed close to 10,000 cheetahs. Remember, the cheetah population today is under 7,500 individuals. So the Namibian population was nearly decimated when I got there and kept coming back to Namibia. Now, I want to say that I did teach my cheetah how to hunt, and my life has come full circle because today we are putting cheetahs back out into the wild and rehabilitating them. But that'll come further on in my story. But I started to figure out what needed to be done, and we needed to go find out more from the farmers why they were killing cheetahs and how to stop it. Well, Namibia got its independence in 1990, and that's when I decided that I would set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund. Here I am with the president of Namibia, the first president. He's called our founding president, Dr. Nyoma. And I met him when I was in Washington, D.C., because I'd moved from the wildlife safari to the Smithsonian and National Zoo to continue my research and to set up programs to be able to go over to Namibia. And when I met His Excellency and his cabinet, after he had just been elected and put into office in 1990 as an independent new country, I said to the president, "Did you know that Namibia was the first country in the world to put environmental protection into its constitution? And did you know that you have the largest population of cheetahs in the world?" Of course, he didn't, and he thought I must be the nuttiest person in the world. I gave him a little cheetah pin, and all of his cabinet there over the last 35 years, I've gotten to know very well. President Nyoma said to me at that point, "When you move to Namibia, come and see me." And I did immediately after arriving into Namibia, and he became our international patron, of which he was our patron for over 25 years. From that, I got to know all of the cabinet, and they knew nothing about cheetahs. And so together, we helped grow our new nation of Namibia as a place for conservation and a place for cheetahs. Our mission statement when I set up the Cheetah Conservation Fund is to be the internationally recognized center of excellence in the conservation of cheetahs and their ecosystems. And we'll work with all stakeholders to develop the best practices in research, education, and land use to benefit all species, including people. Our mission is to keep cheetahs living free and in the wild, and that's what all of our programs have been developed and revolve around. In the early days, I worked out of the back of the truck. I'm a field biologist. When farmers caught cheetahs, I asked if I could come there and collect blood, anesthetize the cheetah, take measurements, learn all about them. I started banking the sperm of the male cheetahs. We did all kinds of genetic makeup work to try to understand more about how these cheetahs were genetically, especially after such a high die-off of up to 10,000 animals in the decade before. And then I went to farmers and I asked why. Why were they killing cheetahs? And what did they need to know in order to stop killing cheetahs? And the things that they said to me were interesting. They knew nothing about cheetahs. They didn't know if a cheetah was a dog or a cat. They didn't know how far their range went. And they wanted to know more about not only the biology of the animal, the ecology, how it lived on their lands, but also to understand more about environmental education and wildlife and livestock management. So together, they actually helped us make our programs forward for the country through our research that we developed, our conservation and educational programs. This is where we are based. Now, when I first moved there in 1990, I had no idea I was going to develop a large conservation reserve and be very active in conservation in all of Namibia. But our town of Otjiwarongo, which is about 45 kilometers or half an hour from where our center is a main stronghold for livestock in the area. Otjiwarongo mainly means the beautiful place or the place where the fat cattle grow. And now Otjiwarongo is very proud that we have been based there since 1990 and have set up roots. And so our sign as you drive into our small town of Otjiwarongo has cattle, goats, kudu, as well as the cheetah. Now, this is where on the map where our farms are. We have about 158,000 or almost 60,000 hectares, 158,000 acres. We are a private reserve, but we're also a model farm. The green area there is a national park, the Waterberg National Park. So we border on it and we are partners to the national park. And so this is a very important part. We're also all self-sustaining. So today, as we've developed our center, we're off the grid. So we have solar panels. You can see them on the roofs of our buildings. We've had to develop all of our own water sources and through boreholes, of which we're on a very dry farm. So in some of the areas, we actually pump our water from 15 to 20 kilometers away to actually help support our center. And so our center is an open to the public hub where people come and visit us. On day visits, we have a genetics lab, a veterinary clinic, and our whole ecological center, as well as our model farm, creamery, dairy, and our livestock guarding dogs. And these are all the aspects of the work that we do at our Research and Education Center. We are the leading global cheetah organization, and we have a sanctuary as well, where young cubs or animals that need rehabilitation can come to. School children come to us as well as open to the public. We've got a private guest lodge and a model farm where farmers come from around the country to learn about us. I'm going to tell you more about our livestock guarding dog as well as our habitat restoration program as I go further forward in this talk. Overall, the cheetah conservation is an integrated systems approach. We have our research that feeds into our conservation, which we then share through education, and we offer everyone to be a part of the stewardship on a global basis, the stewardship of our lands, of the lands of Namibia, of Africa, but we ask people to take a stewardship role in helping our environment on a global scale. What we've done is developed a very important approach to conservation, and by offering very conservation programs that allow people to live alongside of the wildlife. So this has really been our approach in conservation and the work that we've done. And our programs basically revolve around saving the cheetah, from that of our research in genetics to education and training, economic development, hospitality, our land management and conservation, habitat restoration, human-wildlife conflict mitigation, public awareness. We have a One Health program, capacity building, ecology, and that of illegal wildlife trade, regulations, and enforcement. And all of those are the programs that we have put together in order to save the cheetah. This is what our backyard looks like. We are, as I mentioned, border onto a national park, which is called the Waterberg National Park. It is very scenic and beautiful, and it's where the country's rare and endangered species are. We're a buffer, a border down below, and are part of what's called the Waterberg Conservancy. And this is what our backyard looks like. We're full of a lot of wildlife. These are oryx in the foreground, hartebeest in the middle. We've got springbok, steenbok, huge herds of eland that come through, giraffe that are on our land, as well as a variety of other predators from leopards and hyenas, caracal, to all the other small mammals that are on the landscape, as well as that of the cheetah. So we call this the cheetah's garden. And we are, with this, monitor our wildlife on a regular basis. Now, conservancies are a very, very important part of Namibia. Namibia is very famous for our conservancy programs. I've been, in the 35 years that I've been here, very active in developing the Namibia's conservancy initiatives. What conservancies do is they are integrated, where you've got wildlife, livestock, and range land management all tied in together. Unlike national parks, which are seen in the green on this map on the left, 80% of our wildlife is found outside of those national parks on the lands there in Namibia. 40% of Namibia's land is in conservation. With that, the green is about 19% of our country, and the red and the other spotted areas in the middle are our conservancies, and they're another about 20% of our country. So that's where 80% of the wildlife lives. So instead of just having animals in a protected area, these animals are outside, and Namibians love our wildlife. But with this, that means you need to make sure that you have enough good grazing, and so rangeland management plays a key role. And then you can manage your livestock, which then allows enough land for wildlife. And with our wildlife, then that brings ecotourism and other benefits to having wildlife on the land. And the wildlife is much more adapted to our arid lands, which we're constantly going through drought cycles. We are near the right-hand side of the brown, which is the eastern communal areas, where we spend most of our work working with the eastern communal areas. Communal areas are like Indian reservations in America, that prior to independence and the apartheid times in Namibia, the rural communities or the native Namibians were put into different areas. So this eastern area would be called Herero land, where the Herero tribes were. The western area, where you see on the western side, which is also in red, would be Damara land and Himba land, and then you've got Avambu land up top. We've got about 13 different cultures that live together in Namibia. Now, on the right-hand side, I've brought forward the community that we work with, which is the eastern communal areas. It's called the Greater Waterberg Landscape, and we do a lot of training out there as well as conducting camera trap surveys. This is the main core area that we work with. It's a huge area, over 3 to 5 million acres that we're working in. So we monitor all the different prey species, and these are all the different wildlife species that are on our lands that we monitor through game counts on a regular and monthly basis. We monitor the predators through camera traps, and everything that we do has been to study the cheetah and the system of which it's living in. And when you end up with a top predator like the cheetah, all the other animals that are living within these systems are also able to survive, which is what our work is to try to do. We do have a sanctuary, and that means that we get orphan cheetahs in. The government, we work very closely with the government. And today we have in Namibia, fortunately, a very sustainable small group. We're not allowed to breed cheetahs in Namibia because the country wants to have wild and free-ranging animals. But these animals that come to us play a key role in not only education, but also in the research that we do. We've also been able to utilize them for much of our rehabilitation and relocation programs, if they are capable of it. Many of the animals that come into us are bottle raised, and they're not able to go back out into the wild, so they will stay with us their entire lives. The animals are all living in very large areas. Namibia is great for our policies and laws, that we have laws that say a cheetah has to live in areas no smaller than 1 hectare per cheetah. That's about 2.5 acres per cheetah. And so our compounds are very, very, very large. Our work is based on research, as I said, and our biology work is very important. We've worked on now over 1,500 cheetahs, and our sample database, which is called a genome resource bank, is very, very large. So we do bank our blood samples, tissue samples into liquid nitrogen. All of our males, we do bank the sperm on them. What we found out in the early 80s was that cheetahs lack genetic diversity. And some of the things that we found was that their reproductive aspects were very, very abnormal. Cheetah's sperm is about 70 to 80% abnormal. It's actually gotten worse in the 35 to 40 years that I've been working on cheetahs and their reproduction, because in the early days in the 1980s, we found it was about 70% abnormal. Now we're finding it at over 80%. And an interesting point that when I talk about small populations, the Florida panther, which is a small subspecies of mountain lion in Florida, in the early 90s, the population was down to about 50 animals, and they had abnormal sperm up to about 90%, or the males were cryptorchid. So those are the kinds of aspects that you get genetically compromised animals, and then they start inbreeding within small populations, that you start finding these reproductive problems that are actually linked to genetics. So our genetics lab is very important in the work that they do with these different samples that we collect, not only in Namibia, but now throughout the cheetah's range. This is some of our team that works actively on cheetahs. I also have a picture here of a kinked tail. So cheetahs actually are supposed to have long, straight tails, and we have found over the years that they have kinked tails. And this is also one of the aspects that we see when the populations are genetically compromised or inbreeding can occur. But now the cheetah goes back to a historic bottleneck that started back around 12 to 15,000 years ago, that our early research had identified, bringing the cheetah forward as an animal that we know is genetically very much the same. So the population maybe got down 15,000 years ago to maybe a mother and her cubs, and we don't know at what point the cheetah population, why it survived. But at that Pleistocene extinction, we lost a lot of the other large mammals. In America, for instance, we lost the sloth bear, the mammoth, as well as many of the saber-toothed cats. And the cheetah actually, we think, originated in North America and then actually went over land bridges into Africa and Asia after that Pleistocene extinction, and then repopulated those areas, and yet is extinct now in North America, where we think it actually originated. But the cheetah is genetically very much the same. A bit about our ecological research and monitoring. We monitor not only the cheetahs through radio collars and camera traps, but we also study the vegetation, the other wildlife that's on the land. We study the climate and the soils, and all of this we're doing to look at monitoring these interactions between the wildlife and people and helping to try to develop our conservation strategies. With the collars that we put on cheetahs, they, in the early days, they were VHF collars, and my PhD was the basis of everything that we know about the movements of cheetahs. And with that, we found that cheetahs have about an 800 square mile home range. And this map on the left, each one of the white squares is a farm, and each one of those farms is about 10,000 acres. Or 5,000 hectares. I'm giving a generalization here. And so these home ranges, they do overlap, and you can see how large the ranges are. The big green one is actually a male cheetah in a coalition who lost his brother and became basically a roaming male because he was not able to keep a home range. Now, we also put camera traps up at these marking trees, and that's allowed us to understand more about the density. They live in a very, very large home range in a very low density, about 2 to 10 cheetahs per 500 square miles. And so that's a lot, a very few number. And so they do use these marking trees to help them find each other. Females have larger ranges. The ranges are usually much larger. This map up on the top shows a female that we released, and that's a 2-month range of her. The green is where she was caught and released, and the yellow was where she was 2 months later. And she had covered well over 20 farms in her home range. So we do need to work with lots and lots of farmers when we are working. And then again, as you see these home ranges on the left-hand side, you can see that they do overlap. And that's where, again, that timeshare that I mentioned earlier comes in. Females are interesting, different than all the other large carnivores, where females cover multiple males' home ranges. Most of the time, it's males who cover multiple females' ranges. But what we found is the female will cover multiple ranges. The males are holding a core home range, which is much smaller, that can get from about 1,500 square kilometers, 800 square miles, down to roughly about maybe 200 square miles in what their small core circle areas are. And their dominant males will pick areas that have higher concentrations of wildlife. As females are going around, they're making a selection of which male they like best, probably around the resources that are there. And from that, females have mate choice when they're breeding, and they will go back to the same male if they can. And then as the female cubs grow up with the mother, they stay within the mother's home range. They will shift a bit, but it is a matriarchal society, and females and the males get moved out a couple hundred miles away, and then the females stay within their mother's home range. And so that's sort of how the ecology of the behavior of how cheetahs are living in this system. Now, we have been able to release and relocate cheetahs back out into the wild. And so we want to put every cheetah that can go back out into the wild. If a little cub comes in as a bottle raised cub, we're not able to put it back out into the wild. However, if it comes in at maybe 4 to 6 months and it had been living with its mom and it was very wild, we can raise that cat up until it's about 2 years of age. And then we're able to look at a rehabilitation process and put cheetahs back out into the wild. Most of the animals come to us being caught in cage traps and should not have been caught. So it was a perceived threat. And the farmers now allow us to put these cheetahs just directly back out into the wild. We've been able to put nearly 700 cheetahs back out into the wild, and almost 100 cheetahs have been able to be rehabilitated. Young orphan cats that have come to us and have been able to be rehabilitated back out into the wild. This takes a lot of work, and we've written a lot of papers on how to go about rehabilitation appropriately. From this, we've been able to start looking at putting cheetahs back into ranges where they once were. The cheetah became extinct in the 1950s in India. And in September 2022, we made history in India by bringing cheetahs back into the country. This was a partnership between the Namibian government and the Indian government, and the Namibian government asked us to facilitate the process and select the cheetahs. I love the plane that came over to us with the tiger face on it to take cheetahs back to India. So we're celebrating our second year of cheetahs in India. And this was after 10 years of planning, and it was done through the reintroduction and specialist groups of the IUCN, the cat specialist group, the veterinary specialist group. And I was a part of all of this process and planning over the 10-year period of time. We did select a reserve called Kuno National Park, and it was very carefully monitored, and surveys were conducted to look at the prey base. And that is where these first 8 cheetahs went. And then a few months later, South Africa brought another 12 cheetahs. We have had some losses of those animals. However, we've had 5 litters of cubs born. Reintroduction is a very, very hard process, and that's why we want to try to keep the animals that are still alive in Africa alive. But we will do everything we can to try to repopulate these areas where the cheetah did once live. Much of the work that we do is around education. We work with farmers, communities, children, policymakers, global audiences like all of you, and veterinarians. In Namibia, we've developed a lot of different educational books, mostly around that of the predator's role in the ecosystem. We have farmers training guides, conservancy guides. We've worked with over 800,000 school children in Namibia. Many of the kids that have gone through our programs as interns have actually become members of cabinet in the ministry, or they're running the Ministry of Environment and Tourism, or that of the Agriculture Department, or education ministries. And so it's been very, very important, the amount of education that we've been able to do. Our training programs have also gone into that of our Future Farmers of Africa. And this is a program that we developed because the farmers, the rural farmers, wanted help. They've not been educated. The rural farmers were on the land. They knew nothing really about farming. They were marginalized and living on some of the poorest land. So we developed programs of Future Farmers of Africa to teach them livestock management, that of wildlife management, land management, grazing models. We've taught them about what kind of vaccinations to use, dewormers. And these farmers now are becoming up and coming, and we put finance training with them. So it's very important. Additionally, we've also worked with a One Health program where we go into the communities and we started vaccinating the domestic dogs. And then we're trying to work with our government to start a spay and neuter program as well. But the vaccinations of these dogs has been critical because we also work not only with cheetahs, but with the African wild dogs. And both cheetahs and African wild dogs are very susceptible to rabies. And rabies is also a zoonotic disease. And if humans get bit, or anything that does, they will die. And so we try to spread a lot of education around the One Health program as well. With our Future Farmers of Africa, though, the role of farmers, we believe that they're very important and they need to understand the value of wildlife for healthy ecosystems. And so we teach our predator-friendly methods to reduce livestock losses by the use of livestock guarding dogs, mitigation programs, and health and production. The picture down on the right-hand side is a fun game that we play with children and farmers everywhere, but they are livestock that have been killed. These are little molds. And we have a sheet on there and it talks about the different ways that the different predators will hunt. And with that, then they have to understand who killed their livestock. Well, we don't really care who killed their livestock. We don't want any livestock killed. But by understanding the behavior of those animals, you can target the right animal and then practice your livestock management to try to reduce any of those losses. One of the most important programs that we put into place is that of our livestock guarding dog program. This is a Kangal dog, which is a breed from Turkey that's been used for about 5,000 years to protect livestock. So the dogs grow up and live with their livestock and they become the guardian protector of the animals. We breed and place these dogs at the Cheetah Conservation Fund, and we've been able to breed and place over 800 dogs in the last 30 years. So this past year, we actually celebrated our 30th year of our livestock guarding dog program. The puppies are placed when they're about 3 months, 10 to 12 weeks of age. They've been spayed and neutered and they'll be vaccinated. And then we monitor the puppies throughout their life and collect data and work directly with the farmers. So we place them when they are, as I said, about 12 weeks of age, and here's some farmers getting them. Well, back in the old days, the children were the ones out taking care of the livestock, and they saw a predator and they'd run away. And my gosh, these kids are also vulnerable to predators. So by having the livestock guarding dogs, we've also been able to allow the children to go to school, which is where they should be. But the livestock guarding dogs have become infamous throughout not only Namibia, but throughout many other countries in Africa where we've been able to put programs together. But also our program after 30 years, we've been able to actually share our information and help programs get developed in South America, as well as in the United States and throughout many countries in Africa. And we work very closely with people in Europe. So cheetahs not only can help protect against cheetahs, they will protect against any predator that comes near their livestock. And we find that the dogs have between an 80 to 100% reduction of livestock loss to any predators for the farmers that have these dogs. So they've been an amazing tool and they're an amazing breed. And we're trying to share this information with anybody and everyone who has livestock problems. An offshoot of having our livestock guarding dogs we have goats because our dogs have to grow up with goats. And we have started dairy goats. So here in Namibia, there were no dairy goats. I brought them in from South Africa. And from that, where there are also very few, I used to raise goats when I was young. I was a judge throughout the United States in judging goats. And so again, that's one of the reasons why the farmers kind of like me, because I have this very strong livestock background as well as loving our wildlife. But I thought, instead of just eating your goats, why don't we have dairy goats and we can have the milk, and a dairy goat can give up to 3 to 4 liters of milk a day. And with that, we could make cheeses. And so we do have the Dancing Goat Creamery, which is our philosophy. Our goats dance because they're protected by livestock guarding dogs, which are saving the cheetah. And we make cheeses, we make fudge, soap, and we make the best ice cream in the world. But our creamery actually supports the training and the goats, the training of our livestock guarding dogs. And it actually, by the sale of our cheeses and our ice creams, helps support our livestock guarding dog program. It also helps provide employment. And then we also share this with other communities so that they can help develop small enterprises in their rural communities. We have also developed several labels, and that is the product of Cheetah Country. And we are certified wildlife friendly, which is a program that we helped found many years ago, that programs like ours, which are protecting wildlife, and products made from those can be certified as wildlife friendly. Another aspect of our livelihood development, and so as a conservation scientist, I started looking very much at the needs for the people and found that the women in Africa are not very well taken care of. They don't have educations back for the age of these women, which are roughly my age now. We're not given an opportunity to get educations. And women throughout all of Africa, I think, have a similar boat. They're not well respected and they're kind of tools by men. And if they have money, they'll do great. And so we started to develop a lot of different programs, not only our creamery idea, but also we started a crafts program. And many of our crafts, not just beads, but woodworks, have been developed and are sold now in gift shops internationally, at zoos and other areas. But with that, then the women get the money, and the women then, they're now putting their kids through college, and their kids now are starting to work, some of them, for us here at the Cheetah Conservation Fund. So those are the kind of important programs that supporting women have. It's also, we are continually trying to find markets for the products that are very well labeled and very attractive. We have an intern program and also volunteers. And our interns not only are Namibian students, where we've had well over 1,000 of them come to us, and they're usually with us for about 6 months at a time. We do also have a lot of international interns from many different universities throughout the United States and throughout the rest of the world. And we have master's students and PhD students. And we also have a lot of other programs like working guests and volunteers. So if any of you are interested or have family members that might want to come and intern with us, we have a website that has a link to our application for being an intern, but we also have working guests. So a lot of people want to come and know what we do. And instead of just being a tourist in Africa, they come and join us as a working guest and assist with us. So transitioning here, as I mentioned, the cheetah is the fastest land animal. And with it, it lives in arid landscapes, usually open savannas. But there's things that happen when land is overgrazed by livestock. You can get sand deserts that occur, but quite often in overgrazed landscapes, you end up with different kinds of invasive bushes or even native bushes that become overgrown in these areas. And that's one of the problems that we have in Southern Africa. And actually, this is a problem throughout most of the cheetah's range, where bush encroachment has taken over. And it here in Namibia and Southern Africa, it has really increased over the last 60 to 70 years, primarily because the ongoing droughts, but also caused by this overgrazing of the livestock and the fact that we have no more elephants or rhinos living in these lands. And this thickened thorn bush, which is taken over, is a form of desertification because the trees have very deep roots and they're very widespread and they're drinking all the underground water, and grasses can't grow under much of this bush encroached landscape. So in Namibia, we started studying this because we also found that cheetahs hunting in this land were scratching their eyes from these thickened thorn bushes as they were running 70 miles an hour through those areas. The map on the left shows the colored area, which is the heart of the cheetah habitat, has been so thickly thorned bushed that it has reduced the economic benefit to the country by multiple millions of dollars. And the cheetah and other wildlife species numbers have gone down because of this thickened thorn bush. And Namibia is about 1.5 times the size, 2.5 times the size of California. And so, excuse me, it's about 1.5 times the size of California. And so that colored area is about the size of California. And that is where the cheetahs are living, in this very, very thick bush now. And cheetahs want to have an open savanna, which might be about 25% bush. Throughout Namibia, it's well over 50% thick thorn bush, and the cheetah populations have actually suffered because of this. One of the reasons that they like scratch their eyes, and of all the animals that we've worked on that the farmers have caught, most of them have not been problem animals. About 3% of them were, and of that, we found problems like scratching of the eyes. They've gone blind and they're not able to hunt anymore, and so they find livestock. So we developed a habitat restoration program. It's called CCF Bush, and what we do is do biodiversity studies. We then harvest the bush, we chip it, and we make a fuel log, which is a compressed, thickened thorn bush, which it goes through this extruder at a very high heat and a very low emission. So it's an eco log, very similar to Duraflame logs, except it has no additives. It's called bush block, and our studies have been ongoing on the biodiversity. The picture on the left here is myself with Bruce Brewer, who is our general manager, who manages the Biomass Technology Center and all of our biomass programs. And Mati Nkembwa, Dr. Mati Nkembwa, who has spent 25 years working with us and just finished his PhD on the biodiversity and benefits of habitat restoration. Our program is Forest Stewardship Council certified, which is the highest level of forest protection. So not only is CCF, or our biomass program, certified by FSC, our entire organization is Forest Stewardship Council certified. So through our habitat restoration, it provides great benefits for cheetahs as well as rural communities. We've been able to employ over 40 people within our program. And it's interesting because we've been able to figure out, well, how much does it cost to actually clear an acre of land, which is about $200 per acre. And what we really want to do is restore many hundreds of thousands of acres. And this is one of our programs that we're actively working at, trying to scale up. We provide, so it's a very circular system through our local supply chain and the training and poverty reduction and economic opportunities that our biomass program provides. We've now just recently are going into biomass electricity and showing that our biomass sustainably and not clear cut, are harvested at about 70%, allows not only a lot of jobs, opening up habitat for more grass. And as our founding president said when he found out about this 25 years ago and encouraged us to continue it, he said, well, you can clear the habitat, have more grass, which brings in more wildlife, and that's a way that you can get more cheetahs. I want to bring you to one of the other threats facing the cheetah, and that is the illegal wildlife pet trade. Cheetah cubs are stolen from the Horn of Africa. They maybe, rural communities maybe get $50 to $100. They're sold in the Arabian Peninsula. They go through Yemen. The area in Somaliland is a very short distance between Somaliland, or the African Horn of Africa coast, and that of the Middle East. And so it's maybe about 2 hours in a small dhow. The cheetah cubs are smuggled in every which way, plastic containers, um, anything to hide them, small baskets. And it's just been a horrific problem that we've been involved in since about 2005 when we heard about the problem in Ethiopia. And by 2011, we were trying to help save some of these cubs when they started being confiscated. And by 2016, 17, we were on the ground in Somaliland. So the demand comes from the Middle East, where they are pets. They don't have a very long lifespan. As I said, for every one cheetah that makes it into the pet trade, 4 or 5 of them die en route. And if they do make it into the pet trade, they only have a lifespan of about 1 to 2 years. And then they are a lovely animal. They're easily tamed. They're not big and aggressive and dangerous like lions and tigers are if they're hand raised as cubs. And they fall in love and they want more of them. We have now been trying to stop that demand by working very closely also in the Middle East. But in the beginning, when we started tracking this by 2005 to 2011 to 2019, we were seeing between 200 to 300 animals were caught in the Horn of Africa and sold each year. So you can look at that kind of loss of those animals. So our approach has actually been to find out where cheetahs are. We have to stop the supply and stop the demand. And then there's consequences. We have individual animals we have to take care of, as well as that of the larger populations. Our surveys have shown where cheetahs are found, which are often in the green, and where they've actually been confiscated from, which are in the red. In the last few years, we've been able to actually cover most of the area of Somaliland through our surveys to try to find out more about where cheetahs are and work with the communities. But so we've done a lot of research, surveys, education awareness, livelihood development, and government assistance and law revision. And we brought a lot of our programs up from Namibia into Somaliland, which we started in about 2018. We currently have 96 cheetahs here. These have all come in as little tiny orphans. Many of them have died when they get to us. We've had in the beginning about an 80% loss when we first started, down to less than 20% loss of these cubs at this point in time. There was nothing in Somaliland, and we have had to develop everything. We started working very closely with the Ministry of Environment, who invited us there, and in 2020, we signed a 30-year MOU. I was working so fast, we had 5 safe houses like this, where we were getting 20 to 30 animals a year in since 2018 till this year. We were fortunate to only get 2 animals in. So you can see that that has changed a lot just in the years. But these safe houses were horrific. We had them, cheetahs were coming out our ears. And cheetahs need to live in big, large spaces because they also struggle from disease problems caused by stress. So the government fortunately gave us a large piece of land. This is in the green and the pink and the blue. This map is about 150,000 acres or 50 plus thousand hectares. And so we started developing it. What the government wanted was us to help develop national parks in the country. Somaliland, as I said, is a breakaway of Somalia. It is a democratic country, not recognized by most any countries in the world. But with that, they did have no national parks or protected areas. So we started our program in trying to actually build our compounds. And this pink area is where we started. It's about 800 acres that we've been able to fence and develop compounds within those areas. So those big areas that are circled and squared within this middle map shows where we've got different groupings of animals, and our compounds go anywhere from 2 hectares to up to 12 to 13 hectares of land. And that's about 2.5 acres to hectare. So they're large compounds. This is what down below what our center looks like, where we have staff housing. We've developed a veterinary clinic, and we have a very extensive barn and butchery, and we are now developing an education center, and we will soon be open for public to be able to come and visit us. Our surveys have taken us through most areas that are safe in Somaliland to understand more about the landscape, the people, and the other wildlife that's in there. So the map on the left shows our survey areas that we've been through. And the area that I want to focus on is the darker green area called the Adal region. And within this area, we've been able to find out a lot more about where cheetahs are. And many of them are coming and migrating back and forth between potentially Ethiopia, but we're trying to find more about that because we've also done surveys down along the border of Ethiopia at this point in time. And we put up camera traps in some areas, but right now we're going into a very extensive camera trap program in the Adal region. And in the next 3 years, we'll be covering much of Somaliland as well as that of the border of Ethiopia and Somaliland to understand more about the biodiversity of the animals. And that's been covered by a Fish and Wildlife grant that we're working on. So we've been following the cheetah tracks and asking lots of questions. And the communities have learned much more about us and cheetahs and wildlife. And they are become partners with us in the work that we're doing to try to save the cheetah and stop the wildlife pet trade. There's a great amount of other wildlife species within the region that we're also trying to protect. So the cheetah is an umbrella species. You end up with lots of other wildlife there. And many of these are very rare and endangered species, especially the antelope in this Horn of Africa area. So our awareness programs have been very important. We've said stop poaching and trafficking. It is a crime. We've got a 9400 number and have pretty much spread this throughout the country, starting actually just now in early part of December. There will be an entire awareness campaign with billboards up, as well as that of media, radio, and TV, telling people to not do illegal wildlife trafficking or kill the animals. And this has been supported by the IUCN and the EU. But back to the area that we're based in. So this is the land that the government asked us to develop. And so the right-hand side of this map shows kind of where our center is. And then the green is now the first protected area. Instead of having a national park, because there are communities within the area, and there are 16 villages within this 150,000 acre area, we developed conservancies similar to what we've done in Namibia. And so the communities just in the last couple months have signed FPICs, which are free and informed participation documents that are legal and binding. And this conservancy now, and we've developed a second one in the last month as well, are now the first protected lands in the country. And what we're doing is sharing with the communities that as they help us develop these areas for wildlife, they will benefit. And we will be setting up small ecotourism routes throughout this area. And we're also asking them to help us with our camera trapping. So if they see a camera, they could steal it, but we're asking them to be the stewards of the camera traps to learn more about the wildlife. And so this is, again, some of the media that we're putting forward to try to work together with our conservancies. All of what we've done, from our farmer training to that of our school training and our teacher training, as well as these posters that you're seeing, have all been adapted and put into Somali. And all of our programs have been adapted and now are being taught for the Somalilanders. We've done a lot of policy work. I spent the last about 12 years at IUCN and at the Convention of Migratory Species, also called CMS, where we have brought forward the problem that illegal wildlife cheetah trade has been a detriment to the population. And through our genetics work of identifying where these cheetahs have come from, and our genetics work has been done using CITES permits, and the work has all been down at our genetics lab in Namibia, where I bring the samples back to from Somaliland. We've found that they are all from the Horn of Africa, and it has now threatened the population to such an extent that, sadly, the Horn of Africa cheetah population was uplisted a year ago to an endangered species. Most of the cheetah populations throughout their range are vulnerable down in the southern part and eastern part of Africa. They are endangered now in the Horn of Africa and critically endangered in the northern parts of Africa. So CITES has become a very important part of the policy work that we're involved in. In January of 2014, we brought together a global cheetah summit, and this is the first time that people have come together to talk about cheetahs as a whole. We brought 80 institutions from 15 countries and nearly 150 people together into Addis Ababa, and there we actually worked for 4 days talking about the problems, but more talking about what the solutions are. And many of those solutions are what I have brought forward to you, from education to community-based conservation programs to reintroduction and rewilding. And much of this is what our programs going forward are going to be. We developed a global cheetah working groups where we have 10 of them. And we're working not only with cheetah people, but we're working with the antelope people, with land people, with climate people, because together the cheetah is an icon of these arid landscapes. And when you save the cheetah, you save all the other wildlife underneath it, and people can get a better livelihood. So those are where our programs are going. And our Addis Ababa Declaration basically goes along our motto, save the cheetah and change the world. And we put this forward to the Convention of Migratory Species, COP, Convention of the Parties. A year ago, after the Congress, or after the summit, and brought this forward, and is now a living document within CMS. And this is the document that we will be working towards to help save the cheetah. We've got a steering committee, and these are our working groups, not only that of the human-wildlife conflict, small populations, illegal wildlife trade, but also looking at regional strategies and action plans and our translocations. We're trying to find more ambassadors who people care about the cheetah, who can bring the word up much more about cheetahs, because everyone hears about elephants and rhinos, but nobody talks about cheetahs. And we're trying to find more people who will help us. We're trying to look at where the populations are and their distributions and capacity building as well. And all this is going to take big funding. And that's what we're trying to do, is to link climate change money, environmental monies, development monies into the cheetah, because they're not found in protected areas. They're found outside of these protected areas. And with that, communities become the benefits of having healthier ecosystems, healthier biodiversity. And the cheetah can be a icon or an umbrella species to help all of this occur. In addition, we're looking at all of the sustainable development goals, of which the cheetah fits within. And we're trying to strengthen our conservation strategies beyond just conservationists, to get business people, local people, all of you, anybody who's working in this region in Africa, to participate. And we can become partners together, and we're trying to grow our partnerships outside of just cheetahs, outside of just conservation, but actually to look at changing the world. So I've spent over 50 years of my life with cheetahs, studying cheetahs, and trying to save the cheetahs. And they are an amazing species. They're the fastest land animal. If we lose them, well, the next fastest land animal is the pronghorn antelope, because it lived in America, as did the cheetah. And it just doesn't have the same kind of sex appeal. But how can we, as humans on this earth today, allow the fastest land animal to slip away without knowing that we can make a difference? And we will. And I will commit the rest of my life to saving this icon of these arid landscapes, the icon of Africa. And I hope that you'll all join me. And you can do that in a few ways. One is you can visit me in Namibia. We've got a lovely guest lodge. It's small. And all the programs you get to learn about and actively participate with us in our programs of saving the cheetah. We've got a lovely lodge. The Babson House is an exclusive lodge. And again, very, very small and intimate and overlooks our cheetah areas at the center. And then our cheetah view lodge, which again is small, but can take small tour groups. Maybe all of you from the women's geographers would like to come and join us as a team together and take a sundowner out in our little Serengeti where all of our wildlife are. The cheetah's garden and our backyard. Watch the cheetahs run, learn more about all of our programs. So we do welcome you. So with you, there's hope. So please go to our website. This link can share with you the QR code, how to get there. Sign up for our newsletters, learn about our events, invite me to be a speaker at one of your events, or host me at a party. You know, as a nonprofit organization, I'm trying everything that I can do to raise the funds to keep the cheetah alive. So please go to our website, cheetah.org. Thank you so much for listening. And again, if you want to know more about the cheetah, I've given you a quick overview on all of our research for about 50 years. But Save the Cheetah, Change the World, and I'm happy to answer any questions for you. And I'm happy if you want to write to me, our director at cheetah.org. So thank you very much for listening to me today. I greatly appreciate you being a part of the solution of saving the cheetah. Well, that was lovely to be able to talk with you, and I'm back and I'll answer some questions. And I need to figure out how to turn off the recording. So thank you all very much, and I will continue talking to you.